Good afternoon. My name is Helen Folks, and I will be introducing the overview of the Summer Food Service Program in today's training. Joining us today will be Jasmine Sargent with Kid Care and Alina Carlin with the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals, Misty Woods, Toya Porter, and Janet Dupree with the state agency will also be presenting sections today. Let's get started. We have the Summer Food Service Program for program year 2023, and we'll have several updates as we go through this training. Okay, in order to define some terms that are common throughout this training, there is the Summer Food Service Program, which is SFSP, the Seamless Summer Option, which is SSO, SFA, which is School Food Authority, NSLP, which is National School Lunch Program, SBP, which is the School Breakfast Program, and SA, which is the state agency. Some additional terms include RO site, that includes a restricted open summer site, as a CE site, which is closed enrolled for a summer site, LDOE, which is the Louisiana Department of Education, DNS, which is the Division of Nutrition Support, which oversees the Summer Food Service Program, LDH, which is the Louisiana Department of Health, LDAF, which is the Louisiana Department of Agriculture and Forestry, USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture. And just in terms of reference, a restricted open site is essentially the same as an open site. However, with the site types, the sponsor imposes a maximum or a cap level of children to be fed at the site due to reasons such as safety, security, and or seating capacity limitations. Okay, let's start with an overview and the purpose of the program. The program's purpose is to provide nutritious meals to needy children during the summer months when schools are normally closed and the National School Lunch and School Breakfast programs are not in operation. The Summer Food Service Program is administered through an agreement between the United States Department of Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Services, and the Louisiana Department of Education. The cash per meal reimbursements and advances are available to assist sponsors with the cost of providing USDA-approved meals and or snacks as a per meal reimbursement. The Louisiana Department of Agriculture and Forestry agreement is required annually and provides assistance in the form of USDA foods. Allowable operating administrative costs include USDA donated commodity foods that are available for those organizations that prepare their own meals. We emphasize the word assist here so that new and potential sponsors are aware that claims for reimbursements typically do not cover the costs associated with administration of this program. So who is eligible to participate in the summer meal programs? Children who are 18 years of age and under, and those persons 19 years of age and over who meet both of the following criteria. They have a mental or physical disability as determined by a state or local educational agency and participate during the school year in a public or private nonprofit school program established for the mentally or physically disabled. Okay, in terms of priority for selecting a sponsor, in order to avoid confusion or waste, when sponsors are trying to compete for the same sites or maybe target children in the same geographical area, we do use a hierarchy to determine who gets priority for those sites. And this is a USDA determined hierarchy. And it starts with public or nonprofit SFAs, and that means school food authorities. And then public agencies and private nonprofit organizations that have demonstrated successful program performance in a prior year, then new public agencies, and then new private nonprofit agencies. So since an overlap in services can conflict with program objectives, the state agency does usually only approve one sponsor to serve in a given area. And this is how the determination is made. When considering sites to operate under a given SFSP organization, the following should always be considered. Administrative capability, which is the decision of how many sites to administer and how many children will be served at each site. And that will greatly depend on the need defined for the area. The administrative capabilities of the sponsor need to be considered, the size of the site's programs. Also, sponsors must plan to operate programs that are consistent with the size of their administrative staff and the extent of their expertise. A small sponsor with limited administrative experience should carefully place limits on the number of sites where it offers meals. Accessibility is a major consideration. Sites should be easy to reach by foot, by car, and by public transit. Some children will be walking to their neighborhood site alone, so sponsors should ensure that sites are located in safe areas. So, in terms of barriers, we want to make sure that certain things are avoided, such as physical barriers like busy streets without crosswalks. Sponsors should also make sure their sites are handicap accessible. Kid-friendly meal services are also important. So, ideal sites will have tables and chairs that are readily available, kitchens that are easy to prepare and clean up meals, large refrigerators to store leftovers, and restrooms for kids and staff to use when needed. Special consideration will be needed for sites located outdoors. In terms of site activities, children are drawn to locations that offer an educational, enrichment, and recreational activities. Selecting sites that can provide an activity along with the meal, as an art project, a game, school or community garden, or nutrition lesson, is a strategy sponsors can use to boost participation and overall enjoyment at their sites. Um, a volunteer base is also something to consider. Hosting a site at a venue that already has a strong volunteer base, such as a soup kitchen or local faith based organization, is a good way to ensure a site will be fully staffed and well promoted in the community. There are three common types of sites, which are open sites, camps, which are residential or non-residential, and closed enrolled sites. There are also sites that serve special populations of children or have unique characteristics. These include, but may not be limited to, restricted open sites, migrant sites, and national youth sports programs. Open site An open site means a site at which meals are made available to all children in the area and which is located in an area in which at least 50% of the children are from households that would be eligible for free or reduced price meals under the National School Lunch Program and the School Breakfast Program. And this would be determined in accordance with paragraph A of the definitions of um, areas in which poor economic conditions exist. Restricted open site means a site which is initially open to broad community participation, but at which the sponsor restricts or limits attendance for reasons of security, safety, or control. Site eligibility for a restricted open site shall be documented in accordance with paragraph A of the definition of areas in which poor economic conditions exist. A justification for restricted open sites must be in place to ensure the appropriate access remains available to underserved children in the community. Okay, when closed enrolled, an area in which poor economic conditions exist for must be in place for closed enrolled sites. Eligibility determination is based on area data of children eligible for free or reduced price meals, including school or census data. Typically, closed enrolled sites are very limited, and it's typically for camps. Now, when I talk about a camp would mean a residential summer camp and non-residential day camp, which offers a regularly scheduled food service as part of an organized program for enrolled children. A non-residential campsite shall offer a continuous schedule of organized cultural or recreational programs for enrolled children between meal services. The SFSP Final Rule 2023 amends the definition of areas in which poor economic conditions exist and closed enrolled site to include eligibility determinations based on area data of children eligible for free or reduced price meals, including school or census data. This new rule defines that state agencies must establish criteria to ensure that sites approved as closed enrolled do not limit program access in the area that the site is located. For example, a school that provides meals to children participating in football, cheerleading, sports, or leap remediation should not limit meal services to only those children enrolled in the program, but allow the community children experiencing hunger to access meals through SFSP at that site. Updates redesignated establish the frequency at which sites must reestablish eligibility if based on area data. When school data are used, new documentation is required every 5 years. When census data are used, new documentation is required every 5 years or earlier if the state agency believes that an area's socioeconomic status has changed significantly since the last census. New regulations under the SFSP 2023 final rule removes existing meal service time restrictions. Meals claimed as breakfast must be served at or close to the beginning of the day and cannot be served after a lunch or supper. With the exception of residential camps, a minimum of 1 hour must elapse between the end of one meal service and the beginning of another. For example, if breakfast ends at 10 a.m., then lunch would not start until 11 a.m. Last, the state agency may approve for reimbursement of meals served outside of the approved meal service time if an unanticipated event should occur outside of the sponsor's control. This would be a unique situation that would require submission of a justification by the sponsor and subsequent approval by the state agency in order for those meals to be claimed for reimbursement. In terms of meals that may be offered at a given site through SFSP, the rules have not really changed. Any two meal types by site may be served except for lunch and supper together. Meal types may include breakfast, AM snack, lunch, PM snack, or supper. Allowable meals or combinations of meals by site include breakfast only, lunch only, supper or snack only, and then lunch and snack, breakfast and lunch, which is the most common combination, breakfast and snack, supper and snack, or an AM and PM snack, served greater than or equal to 1 hour apart. With state agency approval, camp and migrant sites may serve up to 3 meal combinations per day. Camp and migrant site designation is not a common SFSP site, so please discuss this site type with with the state agency staff in advance of completing your online application, unless you have been approved for that site type in the past. Examples of acceptable meal combinations are included on this slide. Please be reminded that as previously discussed, there are different criteria needed in order to be approved as a campsite. Unlike open, restricted open, and closed enrolled sites, area eligibility may not be used for campsites. So, a question that's been coming up commonly is, are there waivers available for SFSP or SSO in 2023? And the answer to that question is no, there are no waivers for those programs for this summer. And so, what would that mean? Basically, meals must be served and consumed by children on site at congregate feeding SFSP sites, and meal pattern requirements must be fulfilled, and there is no option to waive meal components or items. So the waivers that were experienced over the pandemic have come to a halt, and now we need to look at services the way they were performed back in 2019. So, in terms of non congregate feeding, this is a permanent option moving forward for SFSP starting in program year 2023, and it is not part of a waiver. The stricter requirement is there are stricter requirements in place as compared to the waivers that were in place for summer of 2021 and summer of 2022. Sites must be located in rural areas where no other congregate feeding options are available. The SFSP Rural Designation Map is the tool required for determination that a site is located in a rural area. To access the map, please click on the SFSP Rural Designation Map linked on this screen or use the QR code and access it with your smartphone's camera. For additional information, a presentation on non-congregate SFSP eligibility and services that are allowable in program year 2023 is available on the Louisiana Fit Kids site linked on this page. This training webinar was provided on March 21st, 2023. Other things to consider when planning an SFSP is how sites will receive food or meals for the children to be served. There are multiple options that SFSP sponsors use depending on what works best for their organization. Some sponsors use a variety of methods. For instance, some sites may be self-op, while others are satellite locations receiving their meals from the cooking locations. Some of these options include number one, self-operation sites. And in this scenario, the sponsor and site workers are responsible for the preparation and or cooking and serving of the food. With a satellite location or site, the sponsor is still preparing the meals. However, they're being delivered to a location that does not cook or prepare the meals themselves. It's important to enter into an agreement with a local SFA if you are planning to provide meal services underneath a sponsor. Instead, they will contact a local school system, enter into an agreement with them to furnish meals for their SFSP at an agreed upon set rate. And it's important that written documentation is on file to support the terms of such an agreement. There is another method where you can enter into an agreement with a food service management company contract, and this is an option that some sponsors utilize, such as charter groups, private nonprofits, governmental entities, and universities when they wish to receive meals already prepared at their sites and have the food service management company handle the meal services at the sites. SFAs such as private, parochial, and public school systems are not permitted to utilize an FSMC in the state of Louisiana. And the fifth option would be to enter into an agreement with a vendor to provide prepared meals. In this scenario, the sponsor receives complete, fully reimbursable meals from an outside entity and handles the meal service portion only with its own staff. That would be serving of food and taking the point of service. That would be the duty of the sponsor. Any type of SFSP sponsor may utilize this option if it is the best fit for the organization. Please be reminded that proper federal, state, and/or local procurement regulations must be adhered to at all times when seeking a food service management company or a vendor. SFAs and sponsors are required to publicize SFSP meal services prior to the start of the program and also when any changes to the schedule or meal services occur for each site. For example, if you determine that lunch meals will no longer be provided at a site and children will bring their lunches instead, the sponsor must submit a revision to the online SFSP application and must notify the public through media release, site level postings of schedules and or flyers that the site is no longer providing lunch meals. In order to publicize and encourage participation in SFSP services, kickoff events are a great way to publicize your program. Some of the larger sponsors that we have in Louisiana host kickoff events annually before the start of their program and collaborate with other organizations in their community like food banks, child hunger advocates, and local news stations to ensure good coverage. If you intend to host a kickoff event for the 2023 SFSP, please notify the state agency of the date and the location of the kickoff event. Sponsors operating in the summer food service program must publicize their program each year. Once sites are identified, families need to be made aware of the open site locations and the availability of meals. This is especially important for open or restricted open sites. LDOE DNS provides sponsors with a customized list of sites that can be auto-generated through the CMP website once the online application package has been submitted for approval. This auto-generated document can then be used for publicizing the program. For field trips, please access the JOT form linked on this slide. Sponsors must submit a field trip form for state agency approval prior to the field trip, and it should be submitted 1 to 2 weeks before the date of the field trip. Use the link above on this slide, and as a result of updated regulations in the 2023 SFSP final rule, open sites must remain open to serve children in the community when field trips occur. So please keep that in mind. All school food authorities are required annually per federal regulations to provide summer food service program outreach. For school food authorities offering summer meals, schools and their partners should actively promote it to students. For SFAs that do not provide summer meals, schools are required to provide information about nearby programs that are open to students. Please refer to Memo SFS 21-168 about outreach requirements for summer for additional details. In addition to the requirement for schools to promote the summer program, all other sponsoring organizations providing SFSP or SSO open and restricted open sites must promote their program to the local community using the local newspaper, radio, flyers, postage or signage, social media, robocalls, and more to get the word out. Closed enrolled-in camps promote their program to anticipated participating families. The non-discrimination statement must be included on all communications with the public, and make sure to visit the SFSP Outreach and Promotion webpage for template media releases and other promotional materials. Template news releases can also be found in the administrative guide. The non-discrimination statement must be included on all communication relating to the Summer Food Service Program, or SSO. Well, the full version is required on any document that relates to free and reduced student eligibility or that is greater than 1 page in length. So the exception would be 1 page flyers that contain information on both the front and back. And in that case, you can use the short non-discrimination statement. Visit the SFSP Outreach and Promotion webpage for template media releases and other promotional materials. Template news releases are also found in the administrative guide as well as in the CMP website itself, which is accessible and is customized to the program. So once an SFSP application has been submitted for that program year, it will populate into the tab on the left-hand side of the Summer Food Service Program section. Please refer to the home page of the CMP website where the login box is located to see the full and current non-discrimination statement, which is located below the login box. So this is what that non-discrimination looks like on the CMP website. On the left hand of this slide, you'll see a screenshot of the bottom portion. And the full non-discrimination statement can be accessed in a variety of languages, including English, Spanish, Vietnamese, or Arabic. Now, as mentioned on the previous slides, the CMP website has a letters feature that allows sponsors to access the appropriate media list based on the site type in which it operates. And this will be pre-populated based on sponsor and site level data that's provided in the current year online application. The form can be downloaded and submitted to local newspapers and/or other media outlets. To access the media release, log in to the CMP website, go to the Summer Feeding tab, click Applications, then Letters, and then select the appropriate applicable media release being open or closed. Once accessed, the sponsor can copy and paste the information directly into its own letterhead or other customized documents that it wishes to place the information on. The resource links provided on this slide, including posters, social media information, a prototype letter to parents, etc., is provided by No Kid Hungry. Click on the No Kid Hungry picture on this slide to open a link to best practices and resources by other types of organizations, including faith-based outreach and grassroots outreach. Okay, so next up is a Kid Care software presentation. And just to give everyone the heads up about it, this is a free program that is offered for utilization of the point of service and certain record keeping features. Kid Care provides training as part of their free point of service and record keeping software for both SFA and non SFA sponsors of SFSP. So, that being said, I would like to welcome Jasmine Sargent from Kid Care.
Thank you, Helen. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Hold on just a sec. I'm sorry, Helen. Can you stop sharing your screen so I can share mine?
Okay, yes, I'll do that.
All right, guys, give me just a second. Can you guys see my slides? Hold on. Is my presentation showing or it's not showing yet? Can you guys see the actual presentation? Or do you see notes in front of you? I'm sorry.
I can see it.
You see the presentation?
Yeah, we're able to see it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. Okay, sorry about that. You know, technology isn't great. My name is Jasmine. Thank you guys so much for having me here. I've worked at Kid Care for 5 fabulous years. Some of you may know me from participating in our pilot program from last summer. But for those who don't know me, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I've been married for 13 years and we have 4 beautiful, spoiled children. Kayla is 16, Aaron is 14, Micah is 11, and Keelan is 7. So before Kid Care, I was a stay-at-home mom. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I was winging it. My daughters went to daycare starting at 8 weeks old up until pre-K, and the boys started, they stayed with me from birth up until pre-K. That was that was very different for us. It was a change that we thought we were ready for. I understand the value of childcare education and its demands. Trust me, nothing makes me happier than to improve the lives of teachers and administrators who are taking care of these children who've made my job easier as a parent. Change is hard, right? It's hard for everyone. But the good news is today I'm here to talk to you about a change that is going to massively improve your lives. Now, let's talk a little bit about software. So there's 3 easy things that we are going to aim to accomplish today, right? So first, let's see how the software looks for site supervisors and site staff members. The second thing is, how will the software help you? And then we're going to talk a little bit about our training plans for everyone. I'm going to keep it very simple. We have an administrative software for those who manage multiple site locations on the summer food program. Minute Menu CX not only allows you to see all the different administrative tasks for all locations, it keeps everything in one centralized spot. And then we have Kid Care, right? Our online software that site supervisors and site staff members can easily access and use at point of service for all meals. And you can use Kid Care on any device. We're going to look at Kid Care first, right? So when a site staff logs into KidCare, here's a quick cell phone view of the attendance and meal count screen that they will see as soon as they log in, okay? I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit and just show you what it looks like on a desktop or a laptop. This screen is very simple and easy to use. If anyone has their own social media accounts, right? If it's whether that's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or Snapchat, if you can navigate your social media sites, I promise you, they will be able to navigate KidCare without extensive training, right? Site staff won't need to learn anything else but this screen, and that's it. As the children are either getting off the bus or as the food is being passed out, all you have to do is just like tap or type in the amount of children that you're serving, right? They're going to come in every day for every meal and hit a plus sign or type in the total number of children that they are feeding. Staff can also record seconds, the total attendance, if there's any milk that's left over, or if they serve any staff meals to adults that are 19 and older, it can all go on this one screen. We have a menu notes section, which is a good spot for staff to jot down a quick note to let the sponsors know whether they need more or less of a thing. Site staff can also export this screen to an Excel spreadsheet if they're Excel lovers. And they also have the option to print a sign-in sheet that they can print out as well if they want to. Okay. So the site staff will work on the attendance and meal count screen for the full month. And at the end of each month, the site supervisors will click on the claims. And then here's a quick view of what the claim looks like on a cell phone. And then here's a quick look on how it looks like on a laptop or a desktop, right? So again, at the end of every month, a site supervisor, and if the site staff and supervisor is the same person, that's great, right? But if it's two different folks, right? A site supervisor can come in at the end of the month and just click and view their claims and then submit it to their sponsors. It is literally 3 clicks: claims, view, submit, that's it. There's no more lost paperwork. There should be no more delays because KidCare eliminates all of that, right? If you are a single site location, KidCare is your one-stop shop. You will only use KidCare to manage the summer food program. All right, let's talk about the sponsors who manage multiple site locations for the summer food program. Minuteman UCX is your administrative software that you will use for the summer food program. So it is, remember, different name, same exact tool. Think of it like this. It will take just a minute to manage your site or to gain full visibility into what they are entering into KidCare. All site details like their meals that they serve, the times of each meal, the staff at each location, among so many other things, will be held in Minuteman UCX. I want you guys to think of CX as your new paper trail for the summer food program. You can add additional staff to each location. Feeding more children, no problem. We have enough storage for you to add another site to the list. Staying in compliance, we will help you with that as well. We don't want you to have mounds of paper to keep up with. We want you guys to focus on what's more important, like meals. So let's talk about menus, right? I've trained hundreds of sponsors, and the feedback that I've received is the menu production is one of the hardest parts of the food program. Okay, so coming from a person like myself, right, who does not measure anything when I'm cooking, I have a hard time trying to get all 4 of my children to just like the same meal. Just know I see the struggle you guys go through trying to be creative, choose healthy options, whilst making sure the foods are creditable to serve children who may be fussy eaters. You guys are superheroes to me, right? Because I know that it's not easy. So let me explain how CX can help with that a little bit. In Minuteman UCX, You could create daily, weekly, or monthly meal plans that meet the USDA requirements. The USDA meal and snack requirements. You guys can repeat those menus to make menu management easier. With all the meal prepping and grocery shopping and vendors dropping off meals, receipts and invoices are a huge factor when managing your menus. You must keep track of the food and the non-food invoices and receipts you collect, right? So tracking expenses are a very important part of any business. We've also made that easier for you. Minute Menu CX allows you to enter all the food receipts, milk purchases, and have reports that will give you a total dollar amount of the foods purchased by all sites. So our software will help you with, let's just recap, right? We'll help you manage your menus, the menus that are served, that you guys serve. Adding additional staff, no worries, we'll help you with that, right? Receipts and invoices, we got you. Point of service meal counts, you don't have to worry about that anymore, right? USDA regs, LDOE requirements, and so much more. Now let's talk about our training plans, okay? We promise to guide you through this journey. In partnership with Louisiana, Kid Care will be right there by your side. Helen and Stephanie have this barcode in this exact form, so don't worry. When it's time, you will receive one. This form is good to help train your site staff. We've made it easy for them to just gain access to their Kid Care account and then watch a quick video of how to use it. This takes the pressure off of you as a sponsor to rush to the location to get them started, right? So let's go over the next few steps, okay? So once approved by LDOE to participate in the summer food program, Helen or Stephanie or the staff will reach out to you or reach out to us to get you started with training. We'll start you off on our self-paced training tool. And we also plan to be there in person conducting live training. So you guys get to meet us and we're excited to meet all of you. We will also have webinars and Zoom meetings just to help the sites learn Kid Care quickly and then help sponsors get started with Minute Menu CX. So remember, you guys are not alone. We are in it together, I promise. And I just want to say thank you. Now, let's see what questions I can help answer if there's any. Do you have any questions coming up? Here, I'll stop sharing so I can view the chat box.
Okay, so I don't see any questions showing up right now. If anyone does have questions as we go through the training about Kid Care, please go ahead and insert your questions into chat and we'll make sure that those go to Jasmine and we'll reach back out to you with the answers. And thank you so much, Jasmine, for that overview of Kid Care software. And remember that that is free to both SFA and non-SFA sponsors. So it's free to all of our sponsors, and it can really help you with the challenges that come with the requirements of meeting the record keeping requirements and point of service requirements. And next up, we have Alina Carlin with Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals. And I'm going to, if Jasmine, if you'll stop your screen share and Alina will take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Alina Carlin. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm Alina Carlin. I'm with the Retail Food Program for Louisiana Department of Health, and I will be talking about the summer feeding program today. So who needs to apply for a summer feeding permit? School food authorities don't necessarily have to apply for a summer feeding permit. Only schools that are part of the USDA National School Breakfast and School Lunch Program do not require an additional LDH retail food permit to operate. If the school serves food at a different location than their permitted site, however, the additional site will need a permit. food authorities in their original permitted location will not need summer feeding inspections, but if reports of food safety complaints are made, a complaint inspection will be performed by Louisiana Department of Health. The temporary summer feeding permit will expire. Sponsors must apply for the Louisiana Department of Health retail food permit for each feeding and/or cooking site through the local LDH office. The sponsor or companies contracted by the sponsor to provide summer feeding meals must hold the appropriate LDH permit to operate. For example, mass meal production and transportation to vast locations covering multiple parishes may require a Louisiana Department of Health food and drug permit to operate. Applications are reviewed on a case-by-case basis. You may email me or Alina Carlin, myself, or Carol Newstetzer if you have any questions, if you would fall into this category. Sites must also have a Louisiana Department of Education approved sponsor. The Title 51, Part 23 retail food establishment requires that anyone who sells or distributes food have a LDH permit to operate. The entire Title 51 sanitary code can be found at www.eatsafe.la.gov or at the direct link below. So there are different types of sites where foods can be served. Those include full service kitchens, satellite kitchens, outdoor sites, mobile units, and there are also non-congregate options, including meal delivery and grab and go sites. So for full service kitchens, these are kitchens, any kitchen that prepares, cooks, or heats food to serve. These sites will be required to have a hand sink with hot and cold running water in all food prep and dishwashing areas, including soap and paper towels, a hand sink with soap and paper towels accessible for the children and congregate settings away from the food prep areas, a 3-compartment sink with sanitizer test strips for washing, rinsing, and sanitizing. Also a grease trap. You would have to contact the chief building official in your parish for grease trap sizing, and also for restroom counts, excuse me. Also, you would need a mop sink and a dumpster pad. Cold holding equipment, and possibly hot holding equipment would also be required depending on the menu. Satellite kitchens are kitchens where no food preparation or cooking takes place, but there is minimal food assembly. Food is provided from a sponsor-run full-service summer feeding site or from a commercial kitchen with a Louisiana Department of Health food and drug manufacturing permit. Utensils must be returned to the prep site for proper dishwashing and sanitizing. All food items must arrive on temperature, and a log must be used to record dates, times, and temperatures of the food. And for USDA and LDOE, they require that you retain logs for 3 years plus the current year. With congregate dining, a hand sink must be available with hot water and soap and paper towels for children and servers to wash their hands. Also, restrooms for staff and children dining inside must be available. Congregate feeding sites only. These are where food comes in an individual package, but there's no food preparation on site. There are minimum requirements for feeding sites that must be met for the permit to be issued. The feeding site staff must have access to equipment and plumbing noted as available at the site. Children dining at the site must have hand washing facilities and supplies. The permit must be posted at the feeding site for all days of service. The temporary permit will be issued for dates provided by your sponsor. Congregate dining outdoor sites, very similar to the last slide. All food must arrive as a packaged unit. Again, no food assembly is allowed in this situation. Utensils must be returned to the prep site for dishwashing and sanitizing, or they may use single service utensils. Containers must be maintained clean, such as ice chests, cambers, etc. And a hand sink with hot water, soap and paper towels must be available for children and servers, as well as restrooms. Congregate dining mobile units are traveling food establishments. All food must arrive as a packaged unit. On the mobile food establishment, no food assembly is allowed. All food must be prepared and assembled at the commissary. The safest meals are shelf stable, but if food is transported to sites that is potentially hazardous or is a temperature control for safety food, the mobile unit must use time as public health control. That's where the food must be discarded up to 4 hours later after the food is removed from temperature control. You must keep a written plan, submit a written plan to the parish sanitarian's office upon application, keep logs, and again, discard those foods after 4 hours, up to 4 hours. Also keep and maintain those logs for 3 years plus the current year. Food should be labeled with the discard time. For mobile food establishments, only single service utensils and plate can be used. What's a commissary? In regards to mobile units, a commissary is considered the permitted base of operations. It's the Louisiana Department of Health permitted food establishment. It's the brick and mortar location where food is stored, prepared, and held at the appropriate temperature before delivered to the sites. A commissary agreement is required between the mobile unit and the commissary. Also, the mobile unit must report to the commissary daily for supplies and cleaning services. The commissary is provided for dumping and flushing of liquid waste from the wastewater tank. Liquid waste shall be discharged to the LDH permitted sanitary sewage system. The servicing area must be kept clean and in good repair. Potable water servicing equipment must be installed to prevent cross-contamination, and potable water must be used for hand sanitizer. For congregate feeding mobile units, restrooms must be provided by the stop site. A hand sink with hot water, soap, and paper towels must be available for children and servers. The site may add additional hand sinks with portable sinks for use by the diners of the congregate mobile unit. If portable hand sinks are used, again, they must be filled with potable water and wastewater must be disposed of properly. The operator must include a schedule of the proposed times and addresses of stops on the route. In regards to non-congregate feeding options, sponsors providing non-congregate meals to grab-and-go sites must provide meal drop-off locations and approximate serving times to the parish sanitarian's office upon application for a permit to operate. Non-congregate grab-and-go sites with no holding of food overnight and no on-site plating will not need a permit to operate. Sponsors providing meals through meal delivery to homes must provide the driving routes with expected delivery times, but please do not provide the children's home addresses as that should remain confidential. So what permits are needed? The summer feeding application and the Louisiana Department of Health retail food permit are needed depending on your situation. Either way, you'll need both, but some may already have a retail food permit to operate. So any cooking site that does not have a current annual Louisiana Department of Health permit to operate must submit a retail food plan review packet questionnaire with a floor plan and menu, and also fill out the summer feeding site questionnaire. Any first-time use site that's never been used as a summer feeding site must submit, again, the retail food plans review questionnaire and the summer feeding site questionnaire. Congregate mobile food units must submit the mobile food establishment plans review questionnaire, including the floor plan, menu, commissary letter, and Times public health control plan. If you're providing potentially hazardous foods, also the summer feeding site questionnaire, and provide the list of stop sites where children will eat food. You can find the applications for the summer feeding site questionnaire, and also you'll find that here at the red arrow on our homepage of eatsafe.la.gov. When you click on that, you'll find the questionnaire. And for the retail food permit to operate, you can go to the for businesses tab on the homepage. When you hover over for businesses, you'll select for new businesses, and then you can select the appropriate application, the plans review questionnaire that's for retail food establishments, the brick and mortar buildings. or you may choose the mobile food establishment if you're doing a mobile food unit. So where do you send the applications? The application should be filled out and submitted to the local Louisiana Department of Health office a minimum of at least 2 weeks before the summer feeding service begins. Plans typically can take up to 7 to 10 business days for review and approval. Plans are not always approved. Include a floor plan of the space and a sample menu. The local health department staff may ask for additional information that may prolong the permitting process, so please don't wait until the last minute. Also, the chief building official in the city and parish office regulates plumbing, including grease trap sizing and restroom fixture counts. Be sure to contact the chief building official early so there's no delay for the approval of the site. If the site manager does not own the site location, the sponsor must submit a site agreement made with the owner of the site. Include information regarding the equipment that the summer feeding site will have access to in the facility. Provide the times that the summer feeding meals will be served. So in the situation where you may need to submit a site agreement, if, for example, if you are operating out of a church, but the sponsor doesn't own the church, that's the case where you would need to submit a site agreement and include, the areas that you have access to, hand sinks, refrigeration, 3-compartment sinks, for example, if you have access to those areas, and you may want to label areas that you don't have access to also. We'll be inspecting the areas that are allowed by the site. For mobile units, each unit must submit an application packet. The operator must include a schedule of proposed feeding times and addresses of stops on the route. And if potentially hazardous food is served, again, you can only use time as public health control, but a plan must be submitted to the parish for approval. Also, logs must be maintained, and it's the responsibility of the cooking site to mark when food was taken out of temperature control. It's the responsibility of the feeding site to mark when food is used or discarded. Again, food is supposed to be marked as well when it needs to be discarded. And for mobile units, the commissary agreement must be submitted as well. In regards to the transportation of food, if you are a sponsor cooking kitchen and you're satelliting the food to another site, sponsors who plan to deliver or have delivered the prepared food to multiple feeding sites, including non-congregate grab-and-go sites and meal delivery to homes, must submit the locations and the routes of all feeding sites. Again, don't include the children's home addresses. We are looking more for the route and the proposed delivery times. Submit a written plan explaining the delivery plan for holding food at safe temperatures, and train staff on how to monitor and record temperatures. Also, for non-congregate meals, such as for those grab-and-go sites or delivery to homes, meals are going to have to be labeled. It's important that the foods are labeled so that the children know what they're getting. They should be labeled with the meal contents. That includes the common name of the products, the ingredients. You want to list allergens, the quantity of the content, that means the weight, the measure count. Also, you want to include the source of the foods, which is the name of the place, the name and place of business who's preparing the foods. Also, they need to know the holding temperature and if whether the food is potentially hazardous. It needs to have that holding temperature for cold food, hot food, frozen foods, so that the recipient knows how to hold it. Also, rewarming instructions must be provided if necessary, such as if it's frozen, for example, it should explain the minimum cooking temperature or that it needs to reach in order to be prepared and eaten. Also, refrigerated meals, which are not frozen, must be date marked to be used within 7 days from the date of preparation. Again, they may use, for 1-day meals, you may use time with public health control for potentially hazardous foods or temperature control for safety foods. But again, you do have to submit the plan to the parish. Also keep logs, and discard times must be on the food. So let's say, for example, you're providing lunch and breakfast and lunch. If you provide it, let's say at 8 o'clock, they can eat their breakfast. This is in regards to the time of public health control. If they eat their breakfast at 8 o'clock, they'll have only until, let me go back to that, sorry. The time where the food was taken off of temperature control. Let's say that it came off of temperature control at 7 o'clock and it got there for 7:30, then the lunch meal would have to be eaten by 11 o'clock or thrown away. So I just wanted to give clarification. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. I didn't prepare to say that part, but feel free to ask questions about that if you have any. Also, for multiple meals delivered to home or for grab and go delivery, those also have to be labeled. Same labeling must be included as the one-day meal. The only difference is we don't allow for time of public health control to be used in that situation. Preferably frozen meals would be provided, or shelf-stable meals would be provided in this situation where multiple meals are multiple days of meals are provided to the recipient. Also, after plans have been approved, what do you do next? So you'll receive your plan's approval in your email, typically an approval letter that will be sent to the applicant. You must contact the local sanitarian's office to schedule a pre-opening inspection whenever you are ready to operate. Typically, you should do it before your operation date, before your start date, to make sure that you are ready and to make sure that you're going to pass inspection. But the actual temporary permit will show the dates of your service. So don't get that confused. Just make sure that I would recommend that you get your pre-opening inspection done before that opening date, in case there has to be any follow-up before you can open and serve food. The inspector will schedule your inspection. Again, you must be the one to call in advance. And a person with the legal authority to sign for the sponsor must sign the temporary permit to operate before or at the time of inspection. The person in charge of the summer feeding site, or the kitchen manager, the site manager, for example, must be on site at the time of inspection to sign the inspection report. The site is to be ready for service at the opening inspection, and refrigeration should be at 41 degrees or below. They should have hot water, sanitizer test strips. Soap and paper towels must also be provided for children and staff for washing hands. Also, the permits will not be backdated to include dates of service previous to the issuance of the permit. I explained this a little bit on the last slide. The temporary permit to operate will list the beginning date of service and the ending date of summer feeding service. If extensions are needed, the sponsor must notify the parish sanitarian's office to request an extension. The temporary permit will need to be updated with the new dates and posted to the feeding site. In some cases, based on the length of service, a second routine inspection is required if longer than 31 days of operation. The issuing of a temporary permit occurs when all requirements are satisfied and the site passes inspection. The site must not operate until a temporary permit has been issued. Permits are not transferable, and the end date on the permit indicates the end of food service. Again, if extensions are needed, the sponsor should contact the local LDH office to request the extension. Post the temporary permit from Louisiana Department of Health and the inspection reports at the feeding site during hours of operation. Remember, the summer feeding site must have a summer feeding temporary permit to operate. Please make sure to submit the summer feeding application and retail food plans review questionnaire, if needed, at least 2 weeks before you plan to operate. Please don't wait until the last minute. You can go to our website for these documents, for the applications, the summer feeding questionnaire, and also for the plans review packet questionnaire. You may also contact the local Louisiana Department of Health office for the summer feeding site questionnaires. However, not every Louisiana Department of Health office has clerical staff. Many are in the field. And remember to contact the office before stopping by to ensure someone will be there to help you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, Alina Carlin, or my supervisor, Carol Newsetzer, and we'll be happy to help you. I'm also available to take any questions right now, and if we have time, according to LDOE.
Thank you so much, Alina. That was a wonderful presentation. It's very good coverage, and we appreciate it. At this time, I don't see any questions remaining in the chat. I did answer some questions primarily just to kind of restate that it's important, regardless of the type of operation that you've had, that you contact your local sanitarian if you have new plans this summer compared to last summer. Even if you're a school food authority, if your plans have changed, make sure you contact your local sanitarian and also notify them of all sites that will be participating in summer. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to move on. I'm going to share my screen and start an overview of the online application for the Summer Food Service Program and go over what's new. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for your patience with my technology, and welcome back to the LDO DNS SFSP training for 2023. We're going to review the online application, and I may move through some of the slides because these slides were based on new sponsoring organizations, and I primarily want to highlight what's new for returning sponsors as we go through. So the 2023 SFSP online application for returning sponsoring organizations is tentatively scheduled to open on April 15th. All sponsor and facility or site level applications must be submitted and approved by the state agency prior to the start of SFSP meal services. Meals served before the SFSP online application is approved by site may not be claimed for SFSP reimbursement. So I just want to kind of give everybody the heads up, as Lena was saying earlier, your first step to Summer Food Service Program operations for 2023 is to make sure that you have a permit to operate and that you've notified LDH of any changes to services and your plans for summer 2023. Non-congregate facility or site applications must be completed as separate and distinct applications from congregate feeding site applications, and claims for non-congregate feeding must be separate from congregate feeding claims. So this is very important because USDA is requiring this separation due to differences in the approval of planning for non-congregate versus congregate sites, and also to ensure that reporting for non-congregate claim numbers is handled and may be easily tracked by USDA. No waivers are in place for SSO or SFSP for program year 2023. Now, summer 2023 marks the first year of the 2023 SFSP final rule. The purpose of the final rule is to streamline program requirements and improve the integrity in the summer programs. Thereby, the SFSP 2023 final rule eliminates the need for SFSP SSO waivers starting in summer 2023. So the waivers that are listed are not available this year, and each had a final determination made in the final rule, which which was covered in more detail in this past Tuesday's training. So those sponsors in rural areas with no congregate meal service options available in that same area that plan to offer non-congregate meal services will need to create a new site name for any non-congregate meal services in order to complete a specific SFSP application and plan, and in order to ensure claiming is set up and designated separately for non-congregate meal claiming. The reimbursement rates for non-congregate feeding are separate from congregate rates, and therefore claiming and claim tracking must occur separately. In accordance with the SFSP 2023 final rule, offer versus serve is unallowable for non-SFA sponsors. So unless you're a school system, you cannot use offer versus serve. So private nonprofits, governmental agencies, and universities will not be able to utilize offer versus serve in program year 2023. Now, for school food authorities that are implementing offer versus serve, children must be offered 4 food items at breakfast and accept a minimum of 3 components at breakfast. They also must be offered all 4 components and 5 items offered through lunch and accept a minimum of 3 components. Offer versus serve cannot be utilized for snack. School food authorities may use offer versus serve in implementing either the NSLP SBP meal pattern or the SFSP meal pattern over the summer. Now, I do want to provide a special caution, especially for school food authorities that are implementing offer versus serve. Please note that if you're using the summer food service program for breakfast, that it typically only requires 3 items, but if you're using offer versus serve, you must offer the 4 items on a daily basis at breakfast. We have had issues with that in the past where a sponsor did lose reimbursement for breakfast meals because 4 food items were not offered at breakfast on a daily basis and offer versus serve was in place. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that requirement. Please be reminded that if you utilize the 2023 offer versus serve option as an SFA, as the sponsoring organization's administrator and/or coordinator, you are responsible for ensuring that the online SFSP application reflects how and where offer versus serve is being utilized, including which meal type it is available for and which sites. Site level staff must be trained on the use of offer versus serve. Um, they must be also trained in terms of how to do offer versus serve for the meal type and how to recognize a reimbursable meal when this option is being utilized. The menu being offered to all eligible children still contains all required components in a minimum specified quantity with at least 1 or more serving of fruit or vegetable, or bread grain, or 1 full serving of meat alternate added to the breakfast menu when offer versus serve is applied. Revision to 7 CFR 225.15D2 requires a visit in the first 2 weeks of operation. So this replaces the old first week visit. Now it's called the first 2 weeks visit. Just so you understand, when you take a look at the monitor's manual, which includes forms at the end of the section, you can use that first week visit to perform the first 2 weeks visit. The allowance is to allow extra time to complete that first visit, which is in the first 2 weeks. So the first 2 weeks is required for new sites, also for sites with operational problems in the prior year, and any site where the state agency determines a visit is needed. For sites that operate for a week or less, the site visit must be conducted during the period of operation as proposed. The first 4 weeks visit is still required in addition. However, SFSP sponsors are allowed to conduct this review of the food service at the same time as the first 2 week site visit. It is important to note that all sites must be reviewed and visited for a review of the food service prior to the end of meal services, even if the site is only operational for less than 4 weeks. For example, an SFSP site that is open for 1 week may require both a first 2 weeks visit and a review of the food service, which is the first 4 weeks visit, which may occur at the same time. Revisions for 7 CFR 225.16C remove all existing meal service time restrictions. Meals claimed as breakfast must be served at or close to the beginning of the day and cannot be served after a lunch or supper. An added requirement is that for all sites except residential camps, a minimum of 1 hour must elapse between the end of one meal service and the beginning of another. A state agency may approve reimbursable meals served outside of the approved meal service time if an unanticipated event occurs outside of the sponsor's control. However, a justification must be submitted to the state agency in order for that to be approved. States must assess applicant sponsors' viability, capability, and accountability for the summer food service program. The final rule requires that SFSP sponsors submit a management plan as well. Certain requirements are defined for an annual management plan and a triannual management plan that sponsors must submit to the state agency for participation in the summer food service program. Regulation defines the requirements for submission of a management plan demonstrating compliance with the performance standards in 7 CFR 225.6D in those regulations and describes the requirements for those plans. This regulation does require that new sponsors and those with significant operational problems must submit a complete management plan that demonstrates compliance with the performance standards outlined in 7 CFR 225.6D. Additionally required is that experienced sponsors must submit a full or simplified management plan. A full management plan must be submitted at least once every 3 years. The simplified management plan must include a certification that information previously submitted to the state agency to satisfy eligibility requirements is current. And in order to assist everyone with this management plan, it has been incorporated as part of the online application. So moving on to preparing the online application, let's get started with a look at the homepage. So as you can see here, prior to the start of each program year, sponsor users will log in on the CNP website to complete and submit their SFSP online application for approval. Additionally, throughout program operations, as revisions are needed to applications and as claims for reimbursements need to be filed, the website should be accessed. So this summer food service program online application is a living document that should reflect operations at any given time. So it should be used as a tool where you are revising and updating throughout the summer. So in order to prepare the online application, you will need CNP online access. You'll need a valid email address, a user ID and password, internet connection, and a web browser. So we have heard that in the past, some have had difficulty trying to access the online application due to web browser settings. So make sure you go to compatibility view settings. And what you can do as seen on this screen is you'll want to add Louisiana Gov to the website and click the add button and then close. And then your compatibility settings will be imported and you'll be able to access the CNP website and the Summer Food Service Program online application in the future. Okay, so when you're preparing the online application, your sponsor application, which includes the program budget, is the first part of the application that you'll complete. Second is the facility or site level applications, and you'll need to complete one application for every site. There's a monthly claims for reimbursement feature, a media release form that is auto-populated and customized after submission of forms. There's a health inspection form, which is also auto-populated and customized after submission that you can send to your local sanitarian to make sure they are advised of sites that are operational for the summer. So remember that after you go and you complete revisions to facility applications, you do have to return to that sponsor application and make sure your program budget is updated as well as any other areas in the application prior to submission. When preparing the online application, after you log into the CMP website, you're going to see a gray home tab and a purple summer feeding tab to the right of the screen. And this is where you start the application process. Now, do remember that there is a requirements area where you go in to fill out the CNP permanent agreement acknowledgement, the SFSP agreement, the SAM.gov verification, and CN data sharing agreement. All of these areas must be completed by the head of the organization or authorized representative. These may not be completed by a consultant. So please make sure that you do those as your sponsoring organization. Whoever is listed as authorized rep or head of organization must complete these certifications. Okay, once a CMP agreement has been read and understood, the user will type in I agree in this section of the online application and will log in using their ID and password to access the CMP website and then hit submit. So just make sure as you go through that CMP agreement that everything is correct and accurate. So once the sponsor user accepts, this is what is going to display. And you can click back to requirements list in order to proceed with the application. So just taking a look here as we go through SAM and DUNS, the sponsor user will enter the organization's number and then click submit. And I did want to provide an update. This number is no longer listed as a DUNS number, is now listed as a unique entity identification number. So I did want to provide that update. Once the sponsor submits the unique entity ID, the following display will show up, and you can click on Back to Requirements List to proceed with the application. Okay, after you complete your data sharing agreement, you'll want to accept the agreement, and you want to make sure that you read all language listed in the section, and then you'll enter the information at the bottom of this screen and submit to indicate acceptance. Okay, once all requirements have completed, the sponsor can proceed to completion of the sponsor level and facility site level applications. So please note that the requirements portion of the website need only be completed one time per program year. Okay, moving on now, we'll go to the sponsor application. So after completion of the requirements feature, sponsors may proceed to the sponsor level application. And this application has actually been extended in length. Some information contained in this application pre-populates and cannot be adjusted by the sponsoring organization. Additionally, please note that some areas contained in the sponsor application cannot be completed until the facility application has first been completed. So examples include the program start date, the end date, and total operating days. And these are auto-populated based on facility applications. And also page 5, there are budget details that also auto-populate into that sponsor application. So as we said before, anytime you're conducting a new application or a revision, you'll want to start with a sponsor application, go to the facility applications, and then go back to the sponsor application as a last check before submission of any new application or revision. So in terms of the elements of the sponsor application, you're going to want to fill out your sponsor contact and make sure you list the main point of contact for the program. This is the information that the Department of Education and state agency staff will use to contact you regarding your application. In terms of sponsor type, this will be auto-selected based on application materials. And then a meal service, you'll want to select the appropriate category for the organization. For other CNPs, select any and all programs that the sponsoring organization may also participate in, including CACFP at risk, school food service, including NSLP and SBP. And for a Head Start program, you would want to provide a yes or a no response. And then for year-round service, you would want to indicate whether or not you do provide year-round services to the community. And for prior serious deficiency notices, provide the appropriate response as yes or no if you received prior serious deficiencies. In terms of record collection and maintenance, provide a centralized address where all SFSP documentation is maintained and indicate the frequency in which it's turned in. Please make a note that the centralized address is where the review team will report for any SFSP on-site reviews being conducted. So this is where the sponsor will put the information, the sponsor contact information, and then the sponsor user will input general program information into this bottom portion. Okay, so this is the series of questions where the sponsor would input information about Head Start programs, year-round services, whether the sponsor's been terminated or seriously deficient in prior years, and it will also describe the institution's procedures for conducting and collecting centralized records from each facility, and the address would be listed here. We are also going to ask you to indicate how your sponsor is maintaining records for the management of the SFSP, and we need to make sure that you're indicating whether you're going to use prototype forms, KidCare, or Minute Menu software, or other forms or software. Next, the sponsor will provide the last financial period that has ended for the organization and indicate whether the organization expended greater than or equal to $750,000 in federal funds and in what time frame. So typically our school food authorities do expend greater than or equal to $750,000 in federal funds. And you will have to indicate that submission of an audit report does happen on an annual basis. Okay, underneath this area, the sponsor will need to select all parishes where SFSP sites will be in operation, and you'll want to click Add as you go through each parish in which sites are represented. Okay, so take a note here that failure to select all parishes in which the SFSP will operate will cause the sponsor to be unable to establish area eligibility in some or all facility applications. Additionally, please make a note that if you're a returning sponsor that will operate in the same parishes as in the prior summer, these parishes will already be selected or rolled over in the new year application. Okay, next up is the management plan. And this is the new section that I was referring to that is required as part of the 2023 SFSP final rule. So it's going to ask you a series of questions about your operations, and please respond in accordance with your management plans. Now, as you go through, it is going to ask you to indicate any sites that had operational problems in the prior year. You'll go underneath available sites and click to add any sites to the right-hand side that had operational problems in the past. And just make a note that any of those sites that you've indicated had operational problems will need you will need to indicate that they will have a review within the first 2 weeks of operation. Okay, this is just a continuation of the management plan, and it's going to go over things about compliance with civil rights. You want to make sure that program integrity is indicated and any kind of policies and procedures related to the program are answered appropriately. Okay, the management plan, page 5, includes the staff training plan. So you want to make sure that you indicate that all program staff will be trained prior to beginning their work in summer food service programs. And you want to list next to these required topics the date in which the training occurs. And this date has to be prior to the beginning of the operation of the program. There may be additional training dates that you're planning, and it's fine just to put a summary of that in the comment box. So here, this page allows sponsoring organizations to enter all SFSP administrative staff that will work with the program, including volunteers and paid staff. The user will key in each individual's first and last name, their job title, their number of hours he or she will work daily, and the number of days of employment for the current SFSP, as well as salary information. It's important to indicate the correct funding source here. So kind of toward the right-hand side, right before total salary, you see funding source. And if other is indicated, as reviewers, we would come out and want to make sure that a separate funding source is used outside of the summer food service program anytime other is indicated. So most of the time we would want to see SFSP and then also see when you provide your general ledger of expenditures and your logs for paying staff, that they match what is listed here under the funding source and under the hourly salary and the days worked, etc. So the same process will be used until all administrative staff have been added to this section. So you go back and you see the little add button at the bottom right. You would go in and add each individual one. Now, in terms of staff members that we are required to see, it would be that we would have to see a monitor and a director here on this slide. So make sure under number 8, sponsor staffing plan, that those titles are included. So when preparing the online application, the staff member listed as a person who oversees the program on page 1 must also appear in the staffing section on page 4. This person must be able to work all days that the program will be in operation, or have a designated staff member listed who will fill in for this role on days where he or she will be absent. All sponsors must designate one or more program monitors in their staffing plan. All central office workers such as bookkeepers, monitors, program directors, area managers, etc., must be listed in the sponsor staffing plan. This includes both paid and volunteer staff. Okay, so this is a picture of the budget, and this is on page 7. And this is an anticipated sponsor-wide program reimbursement under Section A. So you can see that red arrow next to A, and that indicates the program reimbursement that is anticipated. And this is populated from your ADP, or average daily participation, by site. So then the estimated meals will populate in times the reimbursement rates to give you what your anticipated reimbursement will look like. So your program budget, you would need to make sure that this is up to date and it's showing percentages that are what you're looking for. So for example, Here we see food purchases that are representing 79% of purchases for the program. Initially, I would say, okay, this is looking very good. We would want to see typically about half or more of the budget should be represented by food purchases. Please take a look at each section and make sure that you're categorizing your expenditures correctly, because this is used during the administrative review process to ensure that expenditures are falling within these approved categories. Under B, you're going to see the total expenditure for the program budget. And so make sure when you're changing your facility applications that you're going back. If you're decreasing the number of operating days, you will need to go back and adjust your budget and your expenditures to make sure that they're not exceeding the total reimbursement initially expected. So under C, you want to indicate if you have any excess funding that's remaining in your summer food service program budget after the summer program is over, how are you going to use these excess funds? Many choose to use those in other child nutrition programs, but you do need to explain how those would be utilized. Under D would be summer food service program advance requests, and you would need to indicate which months you would need an advance for. And the advances can only be requested on that initial application, which is revision 0 that you submit. So please be advised to include what you need up front. In terms of estimated or anticipated reimbursement, this is auto-populated based on the facility application, like we discussed. In terms of the annual program budget, this cannot be completed until all the facility applications are finalized, because the budget numbers and anticipated reimbursement comes from those facility applications. And note that program funding may only be utilized for allowable program expenditures, and any excess funds, acceptable uses of any excess funds should be provided and justified. And then in terms of an advance request, you may opt out of this option by leaving this area unchecked, or you would want to place a check mark each next to each month that you require an advance for. Please be reminded of the following areas: the total anticipated reimbursement. If it does not equal the reimbursement that will be received in the current operations, that is to be expected. This is an estimate. Budgeted line item amounts will roll over from the previous year's application, and it is a responsibility to make sure that sponsors review these items and update them as needed. Allowable expenses may become an unallowable expense if it's not properly documented and accounted for in the current year SFSP budget. So make sure anytime you're submitting or doing a revision that you take a look at that budget and make adjustments where necessary. Advances must be repaid by the sponsoring organization. LDOE appropriation control will remove the amount of the advance from the first claim for reimbursement prior to issuing payment to the sponsor, and all advance requests must be made in the sponsor's initial application. So let's talk about the facility application. In terms of preparing the online application, one facility application is to be submitted for approval per proposed feeding location. Each facility application contains 4 pages and may contain additional pages once we are finished with some revisions for this summer based on the final rule and for non-congregate feeding. Like page 1 of the sponsor application, some information pre-populates and cannot be adjusted by the sponsor user. So if you see some things that you can't change in your sponsor application, you need to track those things back to your facility applications. When users access the facility application linked on the left-hand SFSP toolbar, sites will display as just like they're shown on this slide. So if you're seeing no application, this reflects a facility application that has not yet been accessed by the sponsor for the current year. If you're seeing unsubmitted, this reflects an application that has been started but not yet submitted by the sponsor for the current year. So please make sure you're paying attention to those things because it has to be submitted in order for the state agency to review and approve an application or a revision. There is an option to ignore former sites that will not operate in the current year. So in this instance, the SFSP organization has decided that it will only host a program at the Donald Duck site this year. Therefore, the sponsor has decided to ignore the second site displayed. The sponsor moved this site down to the ignored site list by selecting ignore in the actions column next to the site, and then by hitting go. So just to make a note that, this area circled in red has been ignored because this sponsor does not intend to utilize this site in summer 2022. And so in the process of ignoring that site, it does fall below an ignored sites category. It'll move down. And if an application is ignored in error, there is an option to unignore the site. So if you do that by error, it is okay. You can reverse it. So to complete the application for this elementary school site, the sponsor will select Start in the drop-down box and then click Go. Over the next few slides, we will demonstrate the process of completing a facility level application. And in this example, the user will complete an application for the ZZZ Elementary School. So for each participating facility, the sponsor will enter or select the following information. Number 1, the site supervisor details. Number 2, site type and established area eligibility, if applicable, for site type and use. Number 3, an indication of whether the site is located in a rural or non-rural setting. And please contact the state agency if you need assistance in making these determinations. Now, in terms of determining if a site is rural or non-rural, you will want to use the SFSP rural designation map to make that determination. So as you go through, you'll take a look at your general site information. In step 1, you'll select your site type, being open, restricted, open, or closed from the drop-down box. Under step 2, you'll want to assign area eligibility or report enrollment or eligibility data. So if you do choose closed as a site, you will be required to input a justification that will need to be reviewed by the state agency, because remember, the intent of the program is for sites to remain open to the community. And while it is understandable that in certain circumstances there are safety and security concerns, typically a restricted open status can be used to ensure the safety and the security of that site. In terms of a listing of school sites that will appear once there's a change of area eligibility that has been selected, you want to make sure you select the appropriate site in step 3, and make sure that you select a school site that is on the list that is in close proximity to the site in which your application is being completed. So the closest site is what you pick. Okay, in terms of the facility application, in terms of area eligibility, this information will be populated. So here you can see that the closest area eligible site is Baker Heights Elementary School in Baker, Louisiana, and it shows the expiration of that site eligibility for area eligibility in program year 2024. So page 1 of the facility application also requires the user to designate the site's demographic makeup as either rural or non-rural. State staff confirmed that the correct designation was made for the site based on the SFSP rural designation tool, and that is linked here on the slide if you want to check. So here the sponsor is going to select the following information: the meal preparation type used, other child nutrition programs operating at the site, applicable site activities, the most recent health inspection dates completed. So please take a note that if your SFSP is a school site that normally participates in the National School Lunch or School Breakfast programs, this information should pre-populate in from the School Food Service site health inspections area of the website. So in completing the facility application, please ensure that you're making the correct selection for each facility application, as there are 6 meal preparation options provided that users can select from. So that's self-preparation on-site, at a central kitchen facility, at a school food service facility, through an agreement with a school food authority, and that's when we refer to the memorandum of understanding that is required. And then is it by food service management company or is it a vended site? So if meals are not prepared at the site where they're served, you need to provide the name and the address of the site where meals are prepared. So in terms of the facility application, there is information that will pre-populate based on the calendar that you built, and that will be under the site operating dates. This also will populate into the start and end dates of your sponsor application. To add meal service options, you'll want to click on Add New Meal, and it's a drop-down box that's located near the bottom of page 2, and select the appropriate meal type and then click Add. So once that meal type has been added, the user must edit the entry to add start and end times for the meal service and the number of children anticipated to participate, which is the ADP, and then you will click Update. You'll complete the same process again if you're wishing to add a second meal service option at that site. After the meal types have been assigned, the calendars will need to be completed. So to do so, complete the calendar builder feature in the upper right-hand side of the page by selecting the days of the week. And the site will serve the site that will serve the meals and the start and end date of the program using the format of the month and the date. And then move on to click Build Calendar. To reflect closures at the site due to holidays, click Edit above each calendar and then manually click on the day you wish to remove. The date should change from green to white shading, and then click Update, and you'll repeat the same steps for the second meal service types as they apply. Note that the information pre-populates at the top of page 2 now that calendars have been completed, and this information also populates into the sponsor application. Okay, now just remember when you're filling out meal information that only SFAs have the option of utilizing offer versus serve. And you do need to pick whether or not you're going to do the SFSP meal pattern. Only SFAs have the option to use NSLP SBP. And please note that congregate feeding is required at all sites, including outdoor sites, unless previous notification has been provided to the state agency regarding a field trip or the returning sponsor has submitted appropriate paperwork to conduct non-congregate feeding in rural areas where no congregate feeding sites are available. The same process is followed for the site staff section as the administrative staffing information section on the sponsor application. A site supervisor must be designated along with all staff assisting at the site. Remember that according to the final rule, that a site supervisor has to be available throughout meal preparation and services for the duration of the summer food service program operations at that site. The staffing information entered here, once saved, will automatically calculate if paid with SFSP funding and populate into the sponsor budget. Once staffing has been completed for all facility applications, the sponsor can finalize page 5 of the sponsor application, check applications for accuracy, and then submit for approval. So just in terms of reminders, you'll want to save your work often as you progress through applications, save each page as you go. And if error messages display on any given page of the application, be sure to click Save once more, and this should eliminate any outstanding errors as you go and you correct items that need to be corrected. Enter sponsor comments on any page of the sponsor and/or facility application as needed to provide clarification to the state agency. And if anything changes during the program, whether it's staff replacement, program length changes, more children participating, etc., this must be updated in the online application and resubmitted for approval. A program may not begin until approval has been received, and that goes for changes as well. So if there are revisions to the application, regarding operating dates or times for participation, those should not start until the state agency has approved those revisions. Okay, our next section will be operations and important takeaways, and Misty Woods will be speaking on that topic.
Right, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so what meal types may be served by facility or site under SFSP over the summer months? For open sites, restricted open sites, and closed enrolled sites, a maximum of 2 meal types may be elected per site per day. The meal type options include breakfast, AM snack, lunch, PM snack, and/or supper. Any 2 combination of meals is allowed with one exception. The only combination not allowed at a given site is lunch and supper. Please also note that sponsors may also elect to offer only 1 meal type at select sites and/or may offer different combinations of meals among different sites. All of this information is customizable on page 2 of the site application. What meal pattern can I follow if I'm a School Food Authority summer sponsor? SFA summer sponsor, you may elect via the current online SFSP application to offer the school-based National School Lunch and School Breakfast meal pattern, or the more simplistic summer feeding meal pattern. You must indicate the meal pattern type on page 3 of each facility level application. You must also indicate whether offer versus serve will be utilized at meal services at each site on page 3 of the facility level application. As a reminder, only SFA sponsors may apply offer versus serve to their summer feeding operations. What meal pattern can I follow if I am not a School Food Authority summer sponsor? Non-SFA summer sponsors must use the SFSP meal pattern. Non-SFAs do not qualify to utilize offer versus serve for summer 2023. The entire summer feeding meal pattern must be given to each child at each meal. Without the use of offer versus serve waiver, what am I required to offer to children in the summer feeding program? As stated previously, the entire summer feeding meal pattern must be given to each child at each meal. Please refer to the screenshot to the right of the summer feeding meal patterns that was taken from USDA's Summer Meal Pattern, Summer Food Service Nutrition Guidance book. A link has been provided for your reference. With the use of offer versus serve and summer feeding meal pattern, what changes in terms of the offer and the child acceptance of the meal? Under summer feeding meal pattern, if the SFA is applying offer versus serve at breakfast, 1 additional item in minimum specified quantity must be offered to all children at the site. Under offer versus serve, children must leave the line with at least 3 selections at breakfast, lunch, and/or supper. What are the current summer feeding reimbursement rates and where can they be assessed? Recognition of which rates are to apply is achieved by the CMP system based on how each site is designated on page 1 of its facility level application. This slide additionally provides the combined rates per applicable site and meal type. (2023) Summer Feeding Advance Request. How will this process be addressed in summer 2023? Advance requests should be requested via revision 0, the initial program year application of the sponsor level online application on page 7. It is on this application that sponsors will be given the option to request in advance and may indicate for which month or months they would like to be considered receipt of an advance. Please be reminded that in order to qualify for an advance in a given month, the sponsor must be operational for at least 10 days in that month. Further, if a sponsor requests in advance for multiple months, but later changes its mind, it can request to cancel the second or third request by sending an email to childnutritionprograms@la.gov. Will claims be combined this program year? What about entry of meal data? Will this be by day or month? Summer feeding claims for reimbursement will continue to be separated, containing only 1 month's claim data per application, per applicable claim period. The state agency will permit SFA sponsors to complete claims for reimbursement via entry of monthly meal data, as done for school lunch and breakfast in summer of 2023. Non-SFA sponsoring organizations will need to enter daily details into the claim as traditionally done. Who do I contact if I need to have a claim released for correction? If you have just recently submitted the claim, such as the same day or within the last couple of days or few days, and notice an error, please contact the Department of Education Appropriation Control staff. You can email Tamika in writing to request for the claim to be released back for adjustments and/or corrections. In that email, please indicate the name of the sponsoring organization, the claim period that needs to be released, and associated program. And appropriation control staff will notify you in writing once the claim has been released. Once released, you will be able to make edits, save, review, then resubmit for processing. What sites should I expect to see appear on my 2023 online application? The state agency will review site level data for each sponsor's last year of summer feeding operation. Sponsors returning from summer 2022 will have access to their usual sponsor level application and a facility level application for all sites that were approved to operate in summer 2022. Sponsors that are returning but did not operate during the pandemic due to concerns or risks associated with operations under these conditions will be treated as returning and therefore will be granted access to a sponsor level application and one facility level application per site, such as the last approved to operate under the sponsor. How do I request the addition of a new site location? A new feature is being built into the Child Nutrition Program website to allow authorized sponsors to add an application for potential new sponsor site facility. Here's a screenshot of what it will look like. And next up for presentation is the key areas of summer feeding and SSO reviews for 2023, and that will be done by Toya Porter.
Now we will discuss the summer 2023 SFSP and SSO reviews. CN Resource will conduct all SFSP administrative reviews in summer 2023. USDA regulations require that the state agency review all SFSP sponsors at a minimum once every 3 years. Additionally, when selecting the SFSP sponsors up for review in a given year, the state agency must assess which sponsors received the largest amount of the prior summer's SFSP reimbursement. These sponsors, which make up 50% of the total prior year SFSP reimbursement, will need to be reviewed, in addition to any already selected to be up for review in the given SFSP. At this time, the state agency is still in the process of drafting the 2023 SFSP SSO review schedule. Once the schedule has been finalized, it will be posted to the CMP website and the selected sponsors will be notified. For SFSP review purposes, 10% of the total approved sites will be visited with a minimum of 1 site review and one sponsor review per sponsor. All summer sponsors scheduled to receive a review during the summer of 2023 will receive both the site level and sponsor level reviews on site. Once this training is posted to the Louisiana Fit Kids website, you will be able to click the links to access the sponsor and site level review instruments. I highly encourage you to visit these links and familiarize yourself with both of these documents. As always, the state agency is available to assist you in preparing for summer 2023. Any sponsor that would like to receive one-on-one training may send an email request to travel nutrition programs at la.gov. When sending in your technical assistance request, please provide multiple dates of availability to allow the state agency to work the visit into their existing schedules. Also, if known, please indicate the certain topics that you would like to be trained on, or the state agency staff can provide general training or technical assistance. Now we will review some of the most common SFSP review findings. This is a few of the most common SFSP findings pertaining to meal service. Hash mark sheets completed incorrectly are not fully completed, such as missing dates, signatures, or meal types. The utilization of your own prototype for meal count documentation, which does not break out meals by type as indicated on the state's prototype, For instance, first meal served to eligible children versus second meal served to eligible children, or program adult meals versus non-program adult meals. Serving outside of approved meal service times, or the failure to maintain count of meals at the point of service. For instance, using plate counts or enrollment and attendance figures to serve as the number of meals. During the reviews, it is often found that daily meal count forms are incomplete. Since daily meal count forms are to be accurately completed at each site, it is the responsibility of the sponsor to ensure that site staff is trained on how to complete these forms. Each site must submit these records to the central office on a set schedule that has been approved by the state agency. When using the USDA daily meal count form prototype, the maximum number of first meals served is 150. If the site serves more than 150 children per day at a given meal service, then a supplemental form should be used in addition to the first page. If you have to use a supplemental page, please be sure to staple or attach the sheets and keep them together. This screenshot provided is of page 1 of the daily meal count form. If you decide to use the state agency daily meal count prototype form, the maximum number of first meals served is 200. If the site serves more than 200 children per day at a given meal service, then a supplemental form should also be used in this instance. This is an example of a daily meal count form where there is a supplemental page, where a supplemental page was needed. This screenshot shows a site that served more than 200 children during lunch meal service. As you can see, there was a total of 328 first meals served. Therefore, the site utilized the supplemental form to capture the additional 128 meals. Please remember, if you are to use a supplemental form, it must be stapled or attached and both sheets must be kept together. Common SFSP administrative findings. Failure to train all food service staff prior to the implementation of your FSSP program, or failure to maintain the associated documentation, use of offer versus serve without prior approval for use, or if you are approved for offer versus serve, you are not implementing it in your program. Expenses not approved in the current year's sponsor level budget, or expenses incurred with SFSP funds that are deemed unallowable uses of funds. The use of SFSP funds for leasing of space or equipment without written executed agreements on hand, or failure to disclose less than arm's length transactions. Keep in mind that the SFSP application is a working document and should be updated with any changes that occur during program operations. Remember to update the calendar in the FSSP online application whenever operational dates change. When operational dates are changed, also revise and make any necessary comments regarding the staff working days to reflect the total operational days, or budgetary changes, which ensures that expenditures are adjusted based on expected income to the program. Even if the budget does not have to be revised, do not forget to revise the sponsor application each time a change is made to a facility application in order to ensure access to submission and to allow for computer automated updates. If you are interested in further training on the FSSP program, at this time, the state agency has the following tentative training dates scheduled. SFSP record keeping will occur this week on Thursday, March 30th. We have SFSP Seamless Summer, which will occur on April 6th. The SFSP Meal Pattern and Food Buying Guide, which is to occur on April 11th. The SFSP Procurement 101, which would occur on April 13th, or the FSSP Procurement Plan, which occurs on April 18th, as well as FSSP revisions to the online applications scheduled to occur on May 11th.
Okay, next up, we're going to start to talk about SFSP documentation, as well as sponsor, monitor, and site supervisor responsibilities. Just give us a moment to switch out slides and we'll get started with the final section.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Janet. Hold on, the day is almost over. Let's talk a little bit about documenting your summer feeding program, otherwise known as record keeping. Complete a daily meal count form for each meal served at the point of service, or will you decide to use a software program at your point of service? Which one will you do? Satellite forms must be used when food is transported from one location to another, such as a sponsored central kitchen or a food service management cooking location to another food feeding site. Which one will you do? Production records are optional, however, they are highly recommended. Although production records are optional during the summer feeding program, it is highly recommended, as I just mentioned. This is a sample of a summer feeding production record. Our SFAs usually prefer to keep their own production records, which is fine, and that's okay. Our private nonprofits may use this production record to document the number of meals served and prepared. The daily meal count form contains information that must be included for daily meal counts. The sponsor will not be able to claim meals for reimbursement if the daily meal count form is incomplete. A daily meal count form is incomplete if there are missing hash marks, strike-throughs, adult meals included in children's meals, inconsistent or difficult to read meal documentation, more meals documented as served, that the number of meals available are delivered. So you can't claim more meals than you have delivered. Other areas of concern are the top portion of the daily meal count form is incomplete. The meal type was not circled. The delivery time was not listed. There's missing dates and signature of the supervisor. And the daily meal count form was dated either before or after the meal service and not on the day the actual meal was served. When a site serves more than 150 children per day at a given meal service, the supplemental page 2 form may be used along with the first page. Staple or attach the sheets and keep them together. See the reference materials available in the USDA SFSP Administrative Guidance Sponsors. Now, let me go back to this one. If you use the second form and there is no place for the meal to be listed, why don't you just write the meal service on top? The satellite form must be used when food is being transported from one location to another. For example, transporting from the sponsor's central kitchen or food service management company to a feeding site. It must be completed in full prior to leaving the central kitchen by the sponsor or the food service management company representative. Upon arrival at the feeding location, the site supervisor and driver must complete their respective section on the satellite form. The sponsor is transporting unitized, pre-portioned, unitized meals to the feeding location. Private nonprofit sponsors do not have the option of providing offer versus serve to the children. Only SFAs have that option provided by USDA. Pre-operational visits are conducted by the sponsor before the state agency conducts a pre-approval on new sites. The first 2-week visit is new to SFSP 2023 as a result of streamlining SFSP. Racial ethnic data form is completed annually at each site while the program is in operation. If the site has multiple sessions, complete a form for each session. You also need to make sure you complete the daily meal count form, the discrimination complaint form, you have to have that on site, the civil rights complaint procedures, the satellite account forms, timesheets for anybody administrative or operational listed in the budget, mileage records. If you're claiming mileage, if it's not in your budget, please don't claim it. You can always make revisions if necessary. Public or media release, documentation about training, including the agenda, the sign-in sheet, and the backup documentation, and the letter to the health department. The racial ethnic data, we're gonna breeze over this because look at this one. Try to obtain the information. Please remember that the staff member completing the form must not question the children as to their ethnicity or race. This must be completed without involving the children participating in summer feeding. If it is not feasible to obtain the racial or ethnic data from the parents or school systems due to the nature of the program, list unknown under racial and ethnic categories. Additional resources may be obtained from FNS instructions 113-1 part 12, in addition to the previously mentioned policy mentioned in CACFP 11/2021 or SFSP 07/2021 and policy memos with questions and answers. Records that support food service costs. your inventory records, your delivery receipts for vended meals, payroll and time and attendance records for site personnel included in the administrative as well as operational facility apps and purchase invoices. These are questions that are asked during the summer food service program sponsor review. Do you have records to support funds accruing to your program, such as site records of cash collected, copies of receipts given for cash donations, records of any other funds received for the summer food service program? Have you received any advances or reimbursements received by the Louisiana Department of Education? Other documentation you will need. Do you have your agreement with schools to furnish meals? Do you have a contract with the food service management company? Do you have your bid procedures in place? Records and inventories of USDA donated foods? Do you have records of training that you've conducted prior to program operations? If you have a new employee that came onto the program after it started, please make sure that person is trained before they assume duties. Menu records, receipts, invoices, and bills for all rented or purchased items and services that are included in your budget line items. Bank statements and deposit slips. Accounting ledgers. You need to be able to tell us how you are spending your money. Sanitation and health reports. Certification of independent price determination for your food service management contracts if you're using one. Beneficiary data forms, food donations, procurement procedures. Do you have a plan in place? Written standards of conduct, all sponsors procedure, which will reflect the sponsor's operations. Please, for our private nonprofits, milk is included as a part of the meal. Our children will tell you, as you know, I don't want it, because they can do that at school. But for our private nonprofits, you must have milk with the meal. So if you have milk delivered, if you have 100 meals, there should be 100 cartons of milk. Daily meal counts of milk if you have anything left over for our SFAs. Daily counts of meals prepared or received at the sites. Daily count of the complete first meal served to children. Daily count of complete second meals served to children. Daily count meals of meals served to program and non-program adults. Do you have any disallowed meals? You need to make sure that's counted, and daily count of excessive meals. Remember, our private nonprofits do not have the option to utilize offer versus serve starting with summer 2023. You must maintain the records of the amount of milk you purchased, the actual amount of milk that was delivered, the amount of milk that was used at each meal service, and the amount of milk left over at the end of the last meal service. Daily count of complete first meal served to children. Remember, you cannot include adult meals in the children's count, whether it is the first or second meal served. Any questions? In the chat box, please.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Now we're going to be moving on to site supervisor, site monitor, and other responsibilities and record keeping. I wanted to let everybody know that I know we're going to go past our time. If you have to get off of the call, it is completely fine. This session is going to be recorded and will be posted to the Pennington site at louisianafitkids.com. And the slides will be available on Louisiana Fit Kids site as well. Also, I wanted to mention that this record keeping section will be repeated in a future training. So please go to the Louisiana Fit Kids site and register for the upcoming specific trainings on that topic. Okay, back to sponsor responsibilities. I'm going to work to progress. Okay. So an overview of sponsor responsibilities include providing nutritious reimbursable meals to eligible children, managing the program in accordance with all applicable federal and state regulations, and operating a nonprofit food service program. All prospective sponsors must review federal regulations for the summer food service program under 7 CFR Part 225 and ask questions to ensure adequate understanding of program requirements. Specific to regulations at 2 CFR Part 200, there's a definition of program requirements titled Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards. This section is required to understand when it comes to financial management of the program and ensuring the program funds are utilized and accounted for in compliance with federal regulations. For the purpose of the summer food service program, an eligible child is any child age 18 or younger, or anyone over the age of 18 who is determined by a state or local educational agency or a local public education agency to be mentally or physically disabled and who participates during the school year in a public or private nonprofit school program established for the mentally or physically disabled. And these individuals may receive meals through the SFSP. It is critical to note that the summer food service program is a child nutrition program and is not a feeding program for the elderly, for veterans, or for other adult populations. The most critical responsibility of an SFSP sponsor is to ensure food safety requirements are met and that staff is trained in food safety procedures prior to the start of program work. The reason being that the production and services of quantity foods is vastly different than home food preparation, and it requires a higher level of food safety precautions and procedures. Also, children, by nature of their young age, are at a high risk of foodborne illness, and the highest responsibility of a sponsor is to protect the children served from getting sick from the food served. Our Louisiana Department of Health and Hospital partners presented regulations, guidelines, and resources earlier in this session. Meals served in the SFSP must meet USDA requirements for reimbursement. As an overview to SFSP program specific and USDA requirements, reimbursable meals must be served to eligible children in order for meals to be claimed. The meals served must be planned well in advance of beginning SFSP services. These meals must meet SFSP meal patterns or NSLP SBP meal patterns if eligible. They must meet state and local health standards, be served as first meals to eligible children. And in terms of second meals, meals claimed as second meals may not exceed 2% of the total reimbursable first meals served to children. Excuse me. They must be served according to federal and state regulations and requirements and be supported by accurate meal service records. Sponsors should never overproduce meals with the intent to serve second meals. However, when leftovers are available and it is not safe or feasible to store the meals for service at a later meal service, the meals may be served as seconds to children. This slide provides a scenario where the approved site cap or average daily participation for claiming meals is 260 meals. Lunches served in May 2022 at ABC Elementary include 2,000 first lunch meals served to children and 16 second meals served to children. In this circumstance, there were 5 days where 4 or fewer extra reimbursable meals were available to serve as second meals to children. Sponsors may have a policy of serving only first meals to eligible children to ensure the intent of serving only one reimbursable meal per child is withheld. In this case, the sponsor decided to serve the second meals. For any of the second meals to be deemed reimbursable, all meal components must still be available and offered to children. For school food authority sponsors that are allowed to participate in offer versus serve, this guidance still applies. For all other sponsor types, the child must take all of the required foods included in the SFSP meal by meal type, for example, for breakfast, lunch, etc.
Okay, in terms of operation of a nonprofit food service, the administrative guidance for summer food service program requires that sponsors operate a nonprofit service, principally for the benefit of participating children, and all of the program reimbursement funds are used solely for the operation or improvement of such food service. This does not mean the program must break or even operate with books. That all income must be used for the sole purpose of operating a nonprofit food service. Summer food service program responsibilities for operations include the operation of all areas of the program and the final financial and administrative portions of the program. Other responsibilities include staff training and monitoring of program operations,
as well as timely submission of accurate claims for reimbursement. In terms of staff training, all staff, including central office and site level, both paid and volunteer, must be given sufficient training annually in order to correctly perform their job functions. The program cannot begin until personnel have attended at least one training session. If your staff is not able to properly document and conduct the program, reimbursements can be denied or reduced. Remember that the areas defined in the SFSP online applications as required trainings must be listed as topics on your agenda, and program participants must sign that they have participated in training. Required topics include record keeping, site eligibility, the purpose of the program, civil rights, the duties of a monitor, menu pattern requirements, site operations, and if you're a school food authority that is participating in offer versus serve, that is also a required topic. Monitors are a key link between the sponsor and the site personnel. Monitors must make sure that sites operate in accordance with program guidance and requirements. And as the sponsor's representative, the monitor must develop and maintain open communications and cooperative relationships with site supervisors and site staff. Monitors will also work with the site staff to correct any problems and provide additional training as necessary. Please make a note here that in order to meet program monitoring requirements, that USDA recommends no less than one monitor for every 15 to 20 sites in urban areas. The number of monitors necessary for rural sites may increase depending upon the geographic area to be covered. Now, in terms of site supervisor roles and responsibilities, there are requirements that have been updated with the SFSP final rule for 2023. The site supervisor is the individual that is on site for the duration of meal preparation and service, who has been trained by the sponsor and is responsible for all administrative and management activities at the site. The site supervisor responsibilities will include, but are not limited to, maintaining documentation of meal deliveries, ensuring that all meals served are safe, and maintaining accurate point of service meal counts. In terms of administrative staff training, administrative staff will typically include office staff like assistants, clerks, bookkeepers, and secretaries, and then also will include site supervisors and monitors. Program requirements that must be emphasized in training of administrative staff include the purpose of the program, site eligibility, record-keeping requirements, organized site activities, meal requirements, non-discrimination compliance, and program outreach. So in order to make sure that administrative staff training is sufficient, it's important to describe how the program will operate within the framework outlined in the USDA Administrative Guidance Book in terms of how will meals be prepared, will they be delivered versus cooked on site, the delivery schedule if applicable, and what records must be kept and what forms are used. So one of the critical areas for administrative staff training is to outline the specific duties of monitors, including conducting site visits and reviews, sites for which they are responsible, monitoring schedules, reporting procedures, follow-up procedures, and office procedures.
For reference, you want to look at the attachment 15 in the USDA SFSP Administrative Guidance for Sponsors booklet. And that booklet is linked at the bottom of this slide. Before operations begin, and prior to the discussion of operational monitoring forms and visits required, it's important to note that sponsors must conduct a pre-operational visit before any new summer food service program site opens for meal services. The USDA prototype pre-operational visit form may be accessed in the SFSP Sponsor Monitors Guide at the link on this slide. In terms of program monitor staff training, in addition to the general training requirements for administrative staff, training should outline the specific duties of monitors, including sites for which they will be responsible, how to conduct site visits and reviews, monitoring schedules, reporting and record-keeping procedures, follow-up procedures, office procedures, local sanitation and health laws, civil rights, reporting of racial ethnic data, and considerations for personal safety if necessary. So one area about program monitoring that has been updated in the 2023 SFSP final rule is that monitoring visits must be completed and documented in accordance with the following guidelines under 7 CFR 225. The first 2 weeks visit replaces the first week visit, and this is required for any new sites, sites with operational problems in the prior year, and any site that the state agency determines a visit is needed. Sites that operate for a week or less require a first 2 weeks visit prior to the end of operations. In the first 4 weeks, a review of the food service is still required. This review may take place at the same time as the first 2 weeks visit. It must occur and be documented within the first 4 weeks of the program. And sites that operate for 3 weeks or less require a first 4 weeks visit for a review of the food service prior to the end of operations. For prototype USDA monitoring forms and other required program forms, please access USDA's SFSP Program Sponsor Monitors Guide that is linked on this slide. The sample first week visit form should be used to conduct the first 2 weeks visit. Monitors are responsible for making sure that sites maintain adequate records and that the program is operating in accordance with SFSP requirements and regulations. Please refer to pages 22, 23, and 24 through 27 in the Sponsor Monitors Guidance for detailed information on this topic. Monitors are responsible for reconciling any discrepancies in meal counts and records with the site supervisor. They're also responsible for implementing corrective action with the site supervisor for problem areas. Responsibilities also include revisiting sites for follow-ups as necessary to ensure that corrective action has occurred and is documented. They're responsible to prepare reports of site visits and reviews and to ensure that copies of the reports are included in official files for each site. Monitors are responsible to inform the sponsor about problems found at a site and to ensure that corrective action is completed, documented, and maintained and followed in a timely fashion and in moving forward with child nutrition programs. In terms of racial ethnic data, we discussed that earlier. And what I wanted to emphasize is that visual observation cannot be used to collect racial ethnic data. Verbal identification is also highly discouraged, especially for children. And we want to make sure that if there's any non-school sponsor that does not have access to this data, that they use race, that underneath the race and ethnicity section, that they mark unknown across that section where data is collected on the number of students by race and ethnicity. In terms of an overview of SFSP forms and monitoring, you will want to utilize the Sponsor Monitors Guide, and within that guide, you will find pre-operational visit forms, the first 2 weeks visit form, and what you'll see at the top is the first week visit, but it is the same prototype information. Then you'll see the first 4 weeks visit, also known as the review of the food service and the racial ethnic data form. When a follow-up visit or review is necessary, monitors and sponsors must conduct follow-up visits for any serious deficiencies that were identified during a site visit, including a pre-op or the first 2 weeks visit, or the site review, which occurs in the first 4 weeks visit, to ensure that permanent corrective action has been implemented. Make sure that all monitoring forms include the required signatures and that they also include site names and the dates of the visits. Site level staff training should cover the following areas at a minimum: a general explanation of the program and the purpose, a description of how the site will operate, and different areas that need to be covered depending on the type of meal service option that is used, an explanation of record keeping requirements, which documents must be maintained, and when to submit monitoring to the central office. Outline of the monitor's responsibilities, and to explain civil rights requirements and discrimination complaint handling. It's also critical to explain other policies that are specific to the SFSP organization. So in summary of responsibilities, sponsors are responsible for all aspects of the summer food service program in accordance with 7 CFR 225 and 2 CFR 200, including but not limited to providing reimbursable meals, managing the SFSP program in accordance with all applicable federal and state regulations, operating a nonprofit food service, oversight of all program operations, financial, administrative, and managerial accountability, training of all SFSP staff prior to the start of program work, monitoring of sites in accordance with the latest USDA guidance and regulations, ensuring adequate site supervision in accordance with the 2023 SFSP final rule, and timely and accurate submission of claims for reimbursement. It's important to make note that turnover is pretty common over the summer food service program. So it's important to make sure that there is a procedure in place to ensure that any new employees are trained adequately before they begin program work. Okay, this concludes the summer food service program training for 2023. Please let me know if you have any questions in the chat box. And this will be, this session will be recorded and posted to the Louisiana Fit Kids website. And also all of the slides will be posted as well. For general questions, please make sure you submit those questions to Child Nutrition Programs at la.gov in order to get a prompt response. So thank you everyone for your time and your participation today. And I'm going to take a moment just to take a look at the chat box and see if I can address any questions. Okay, so I did see a question about whether Kid Care includes all of the forms, and I have to say that they do not include all of the forms. A couple of the major areas that they assist with is point of service accountability. So the point of service can be taken with Kid Care software. They also have a claims feature, and there is also a menu and invoice feature. It's important to understand that anytime a software system is utilized, that it is the sponsor's responsibility to make sure that requirements are met for the program. And that's why participation in these trainings is so very important. Okay, well, thank you again. I don't see any further questions in chat at this time. And please contact us once again at childnutritionprograms@la.gov for any further questions. Thank you so much.